Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Peter Evans if you're new here, and in this episode we'll be focusing on two key models in our e-farm management system, that is the lactation and the milk models, the ones that you're seeing on your screen. These models are the backbone of our application, helping us to keep track of the critical data related to our cows and their milk production. And so, before we jump into the PyCharm editor to explore these models in depth, let me give you a quick overview of what they are all about. The lactation model represents the lactation period for our cows, and it shall include essential attributes such as the start and the end dates, the associated cow, the lactation number, and even pregnancy records where applicable. And so, managing these lactation periods is crucial for the well-being of our cows and efficient dairy production. And on the other hand, the milk model is about recording the milk production of our cows. It shall include details like the milking date, the cow responsible for the milk, the amount produced, and its association with specific lactation record. And now, without further ado, let's switch to PyCharm and explore these models firsthand. Over here, we have our models open and ready for us to explore. So I'll start with the lactation model. So in the lactation model, we have these fields, the start and the end dates, quite descriptive. The cow field shall associate a lactation record to a specific cow. The lactation number shall be the number of the lactation of that cow. Then the pregnancy over here shall be a field that actually ties each and every lactation to a pregnancy record if applicable. So this field is nullable because sometimes, let's say a farmer buys an in-calf heifer. So technically the farmer won't have the pregnancy record of that cow, but the cow will give birth while in his or her farm. So technically, that lactation record shall actually miss the pregnancy tied to it. And then for the end date as well, it's nullable because if the lactation is ongoing, technically we won't have any end date associated with it. And then now we are also extending the default objects manager using our lactation manager over here. So heading over to our managers.py. Here's our lactation manager, and we have three methods inside it, that is the days in lactation, the lactation stage, as well as lactation end date formatted. So the first method over here, days in lactation, calculates the number of days in the lactation period. So we first of all check if the lactation date is available, and if that's the case, we shall return the number of days that that lactation actually took to end. And then if the lactation does not have any end date, if the lactation instance does not have any end date, then we shall actually subtract the lactation start date from the current today's date and then return the number of days that have elapsed. And then for the lactation stage over here, as the name suggests, quite descriptive. First of all, we check if the lactation instance has some end date associated with it. If that's the case, then we return the end date statement over here. And by there, they'll introduce this concept of having my choices in classes. So here it is, you can see the end date over here that is highlighted. So back to our managers, you can see over here that we check if the days in lactation is less than or equal to 100, we shall classify that as early, and if it's between 101 to 200, we shall classify that as mid. Then if it's between 201 to 275, then we shall classify that one as late lactation. And then anything above that, so technically, let's say for example, the lactation period of a cow, the average lactation period of a cow is around maybe 305 days. So 276 to 305 shall be classified as dry. And then the last method, lactation end date formatted over here. If the lactation end date shall be actually availed or maybe it's present, then we shall return a formatted end date over here where this is the syntax. The percentage Y stands for the year, the percentage M stands for the month, and then the percentage D stands for the day. Where, let's take for example, I'm recording this today on 10th September 2023. It will be 2023-09-10. But if there is no any lactation end date, or maybe now the lactation shall be ongoing, actually that's a statement that we shall return. And so back to our models over here. These properties over here, like this one, days in lactation, technically just leverage on whatever the manager returns, and then with this we shall be able to do something like lactation dot days in lactation, because that's actually the importance of decorating these methods by use of the add property decorator. So if we just do something like lactation.days in lactation, then we shall return the number of days. The similar thing happens to the lactation stage over here, as well as the property of the end date underscore. And by the way, don't get confused. Over here, the end date has the underscore at the end, but this field actually does not have so. I've just actually formatted it this way so that to avoid any chances of being confused about that. And then in our clean method for this model over here, we shall be calling several methods. I have actually commented out these two methods purposefully. I shall explain that. So we shall be validating the age of the cow, as well as also the fields for this lactation model. So into our validators.py, here is the lactation validator. So we have these methods over here, starting with the validation of age, where we check for the start date of the lactation, as well as also the cow that is associated with that instance. And so here is how it works. First of all, we check if the start date is less than the cow's date of birth plus 635 days. So you might be wondering, by the way, what's happening over here. So the rationale over here is that technically for a cow to become pregnant, it must be 365 days, that is 1 year. Then for the cow to actually be eligible for lactation, technically means that the cow must have been pregnant and the pregnancy is carried to term, that is 270 days to 295 days, as we actually defined in our pregnancy model. You can go and refer back to our previous tutorial over there. And so 365 days plus 270 days, now that sums up to 635 days. So that means that for a cow to have any lactation record in our farm, it must be 635 days old or more. So we check, by the way, if the start date actually meets that, and if that's not the case, then we shall actually throw this. And by the way, what this means is that, let's say for example now we have something like the start date is less than this summation of this. So let's say that we say that the cow is now lactating at maybe the 500th day. So that technically means that if the cow is 500 days old, 500 minus 365th day, that is our threshold for pregnancy, will be 135. So even if the cow was pregnant on 365th day, technically it means that it will be around 135th day into gestation. And so if that's the case, then we shall raise this error. And then we also validate the cow's origin, where we only allow cows which are bought to have manual lactation record entry. For the ones that are actually born in our farm, everything shall be automatically configured, or rather added. Like for example, we shall have signals and stuff of that kind. And then we also validate the cow's category. These ones are responsible for keeping in check any manual data entry, where the cows that have, the cows which have actually given birth must be categorized as milking cows, and also the category that is chosen must also be amongst the cow category choices values. Then we also perform validations on the fields, that is the start date, the pregnancy, the lactation number, the cow that's associated with that lactation, and the lactation object itself. So we ensure that the start date is not in the future, and if the lactation date is present over there, it must not be in the future. And then we ensure that if the cow is bought, the pregnancy field must be none. So just like I was explaining about an in-calf heifer that is actually bought, so the pregnancy record is not within our farm. So technically, that means that the pregnancy field must be none. And if it has something, then we shall throw this error. Then finally, for this validation of lactation, what we're actually doing over here is checking if this division over here returns something less than 1. And so what happens over here is that we already know that the 635 days is the threshold for a cow to have any lactation record entry based on its age. So if the subtraction over here divided by 305 days, that is the typical average lactation period for cows, it's always 305 days. If the division over here returns something that is less than 1, meaning that the cow has its first lactation, then the lactation number must be 1, because there is no way, let's say the cow is 700 days old, and then that technically means that if we subtract from 635th day, assuming that the cow took 270 days in its gestation, technically it means that the cow will be 600, not 600 actually, it will be 65 days into lactation. So of course, if you divide that, you will get something that is like, okay, a fifth. And that tells you that the cow has actually just given birth the first time. So the lactation must also be 1. So that's it for the lactation validator. So back to our models.py. So these are the 2 validation checks over here. We shall not be applying them in our clean method simply because, let's take for example lactation validator dot validate cow origin. So if we go back to our validation over here, like in this case, the validation of the cow origin, and if not, cow is bought. So this technically means that each and every time that we try saving in the lactation record, we shall be having this executed, because that is how the model save flow works, where in our save method, before just the model is actually being saved, the clean method is always being called and all the validation checks are performed. And if we actually put it over here, and that's the case, this shall be performed each and every time. And that shall be leading to errors for even cows that are actually born in our farm. So we shall actually apply these 2 validations somewhere that is in the serializers. And of course, you understand that the serializer validates stuff before even it reaches the model layer. So in our save method, we call the clean to perform these 2 validations. And then now we head over to our milk model over here. Our milk model has these fields: the milking date that is automatically logged, the cow that is associated with that milk record, the amount in kgs, and also the lactation that is associated with that milk. So our milk record as well has these validations that is in the milk validator, that is the validate amount in kgs, as well as also the validate the cow eligibility status. So back again to our validators.py, and then inside our milk validator, we have these methods: the validate amount in kgs, that ensures that the amount in kgs is not less than 0, and then also the amount in kgs is not more than 35. In my country, there's no any cow that actually can produce more than 35 kgs of milk per milking session. Maybe this could be different in your country, but if that's the case, you can just tweak that. And then now we also validate the eligibility status of a cow, where the cow must not be dead, the cow must not be marked as sold, it must be a female cow, as well as also the cow must be 21 months or older. So by the way, you might be wondering the reason why I've been using this 30.417. So the rationale over here is that if we perform, let me just open my calculator over here. If we go ahead and then multiply 30.417 multiplied by 12, that is the total months in a year, it will give you 365 days. So that technically means that each and every month has 30.41 days. In order to be accurate, we have to do that. And so if the cow is less than 21 months old, where I had already told you that the cow takes a year to be eligible for pregnancy, then around another 9 months, so 12 plus 9 is 21 months old, that error shall be actually raised. And then we also check if the cow has some associated lactation record, and if that's not the case, shall raise this error. Also, if the lactation stage of the cow is either dry or ended, we shall raise these respective errors. And then for this one, I'll actually check on how to format it. Maybe in future, you will see that I've actually added it. But don't worry, if you don't understand anything about it, you can just simply comment down in the comment section below, then I'll gladly answer you. So that's it for our validators.py. So from our models over here, we've actually tackled the today's stuff. And in our save method for this milk model, we call the clean in order to just validate all this stuff. So since now we've already tackled the models as well as the validators, I'll now simply go through the signals.py. And in this tutorial, I've actually refactored the signal that we had earlier on from the previous tutorials. So the signal is named set lactation for the new milk record, where it shall be listening for the presave of the milk record. So what happens over here is that we check if the instance, and of course instance over here is the milk instance. So if the milk instance.lactation is none, meaning that there is no any lactation record that is assigned to that very milk record, then we shall go ahead and then fetch the most recent lactation for that cow and then assign that. And so that's it for the signals. It was pretty short and simple as such. So we head over to the serializers.py. And over here in our serializer, just like the previous tutorials, this is quite simple. It's only for the properties that are calculated fields where we specify as read-only, where the days in lactation, the lactation stage, as well as the end date shall be provided as read-only fields. And then the rest, we just serialize all of them. So we are actually, by the way, overriding the create method over here in order to apply the two validations that I've actually told you. Let me just go back to the validators here. Inside our lactation validator, yeah, this one, the the validate cow origin, as well as also the validate the cow category. So by now I'm pretty sure you understand the reason why I've actually put them here. Since this shall be coming from the front end, that is the manual data entry for the lactation, as I have told you that the cows that are born in our farm shall have everything actually sorted out automatically, but for the cows that are bought, this shall be actually affected. So that's the reason why all this is done over here. And then for our milk serializer, everything is typically serialized. So that's it for our serializers. So I'll just head over to the permissions once again. It's just similar to whatever we've been actually discussing. And the first permission for the today's tutorial, we have the can add lactation record, where for this, typically will only allow the farm owners as well as also the farm managers to do so. And if anybody without the necessary permissions try to do that, he or she shall have this error. Only farm owners and farm managers have permissions to add lactation record. Similar thing applies to the can view lactation record, where over here now it's for the whole farm staff. So if somebody is not logged in, or maybe is not actually categorized as a farm owner, the farm worker, the farm manager, or the assistant farm manager, he or she shall get this error. Or maybe if that person is not authenticated, then this shall follow. So all these other permissions, let's take for example, by the way, they can add milk. We allow all the farm staff to add milk records, since sometimes in a dairy farm setup, all the farm staff, sometimes they just go and milk. So that's the reason why I've allowed everyone. If anybody without these permissions try to do so, we shall have that error. Only farm staff have permission to add the milk records. Or maybe if that person is not actually authenticated, then we shall have authentication credentials were not provided. So similar stuff applies to all this stuff, but for, let's say, something like they can delete milk, we restrict only to the farm owner as well as also the farm manager. So that's it for our permissions.py. Now we head over to the views. So over here in the views, I'll start by the lactation ViewSet, where just like from the previous tutorial, we specify the serializer class. So the serializer class over here is the lactation serializer. We also specify the query set. And by the way, this stuff I'll actually optimize them, because there are things like select related, prefetch related that shall actually optimize the querying aspect of our whole project. But for now, we shall just use them as this. And then we activate filtration by use of the Django filter backend and ordering filter from the REST framework filters. So we shall be performing filtration based on whatever we have actually defined in our lactation filter set class over here. And then we shall be ordering the lactation records based on the most recent. And then now we apply our permissions over here, where we ensure that if the request is a post request that is associated with the creation of new lactation records, then we shall apply can add lactation record. Then if it's about deletion of a lactation record, then we shall do this. Else if it's just some stuff, then we shall actually now apply the can view lactation record. So some stuff that I've actually talked about is things like retrieval or maybe just viewing. So we also have this update method here that I've actually completely blocked it out. So I don't really want people to update our lactation records, because these are production records and we need error-free records. So that's the reason why I've actually restricted any updation of lactation records. And then for the deletion of the lactation record, first of all, we check if lactation record has some associated pregnancy, then we shall actually raise the HTTP 403 forbidden error of the message deletion not allowed. Lactation record has some associated pregnancy with it. But if that's not the case, where let's say a lactation record has no maybe associated pregnancy, of which it's very rare by the way, because the way we've defined our code, then we shall just go ahead and then now delete that. And then in our list method over here, that's actually also overridden just from the previous tutorial. These things are just quite similar. So we actually apply the filtration if the request has some query parameters associated with it. So if the query set is not actually existing, where the two cases shall actually resolve to this, where the first one is where the query parameters does not actually return anything, then we shall throw this no lactation records found matching provided filters, or maybe if there are no any request query parameters and we have not actually just added any lactation record in our farm database, then we shall just have this no lactation records found of the HTTP status 200 OK. And if that's not the case, where the query set is actually there, we shall just go ahead and serialize the query set and then return the response. And then for the milk view set as well, similar stuff just applies. For the creation, we apply the can add milk. For the deletion, we apply the can delete milk permissions. Then for the update, we shall apply the can update milk permission. For the viewing, we shall just apply the can view milk. I'm pretty sure that this one is restricted for the farm manager and the farm owner only. And then we actually override the updating aspect of this view set, that is now updating of the milk model. So technically the reason why I'm doing this is because since this is production records, we need, just like I've actually just said, that we need very clean data, free of errors, and actually very accurate. We'll actually restrict the updates. And by the way, what I realize is that if we want to actually allow patching, because sometimes we might allow the farm manager, like I've actually specified over here, farm manager and the farm owner, to sometimes update milk records. If you actually just go ahead and do not actually add this partial update over here, then this one actually stands in for the all of this update, so it shall not allow any patch requests. So technically you have to override all of them. So this one shall be blocked, where we have the method not allowed that returns the HTTP status 405. So we shall not allow any put request, but we shall allow patch requests. So the reason why by there I've done that is that because sometimes in our Angular front end, we shall stop the update of maybe, because there's no way, by the way, a milk record can belong to cow A, and then when it's updated, then it's like the milk record is now shifted to cow B. Errors always do occur in things like, let's say, the amount, where maybe somebody returned 10 kilos of milk, then it was maybe 15. So I do believe that that makes a lot of sense that way. And then just like from the lactation view set, we also do the same thing for the listing method over here, where we also apply the query parameters if they're supplied with the request. And so that's it for our views in this tutorial. So maybe just to give you a quick glimpse of whatever we have in our filters.py, here is our lactation filter set. So we shall be able to filter based on the start date, the year, the month, as well as also the lactation number. And then for our milk filter set, we shall be able to filter based on the cow, the milking date, the day of milking, the week of milking, the month of milking, as well as also the year of milking. And so with that, I do believe that we've actually tackled almost everything that I've actually introduced. And then just like the previous tutorial, shall just go ahead and check for our tests. So over here, I've actually introduced the two tests, but for this one, I've actually commented it out because I just want to explain a single test in the interest of time. So we have this test delete lactation with the pregnancy as a farm owner. So the thing that I was actually telling you, that if we try deleting a lactation record that has some associated pregnancy, then we shall get the forbidden error of the HTTP 403 forbidden. So in this case, I just went ahead and added these print statements over here so as to give you a quick glimpse of whatever actually is happening. So I'll just go ahead and run it. Okay, so the tests are running. So it seems like I didn't comment everything, but okay, well, here we have it. So you can see, let me just expand it a little bit more. Just close this so that it becomes clearly visible. Yes, now you can see that is 0. Oops. I'll just have to, let me just reduce this to 110% so that, yes, now you can see over here where the print lactation cow parity. So this technically we are accessing the cow's parity is 0 for now. It's 0 because we've not actually added the cow that has actually, the calf that is actually given birth, because you can see over here we are using the setup pregnancy to lactation data. So technically means that if we save this pregnancy record, it's like the cow will have given birth, and since it has given birth, there shall be lactation data that is created to it, or rather tied to it. So if we add that calf, then this one shall change to 1, and then also the cow's current production status is now open since the cow is no longer pregnant because it has just given birth. And then for the lactation number, since the lactation record has been created, it shall be 1 since that is the first lactation. And then for the lactation stage, it's early, and then for the days in lactation, it's 100. So if I just take you through, let me just bring this back in our file that contains our fixtures over here. Here is the setup pregnancy to lactation data. So we create the cow first of all. By the way, the cow that is eligible for the pregnancy, because all those validation checks are actually being performed through. So we save that cow, and then we also go ahead and then now create the pregnancy to lactation data, where we specify that the pregnancy started 370 days ago. So, and then the cow actually gave birth 100 days ago. So technically that brings a difference of 270. And by the way, if we actually do something like, let's say 340, and then simply go ahead and try running that, just to confirm to you that the error shall be raised. Let's just give it a short while. You can see over here that the difference between the calving and the starting date should be 270 to 295 days, and the current difference is 240 days. So that's what I was telling you, to confirm that all those other validation checks are also covered. And so that's it for the test delete lactation with pregnancy as a farm owner. So I'll just go ahead and bring back all those others, just uncomment them. There are so many, so they do take quite some time to run. So just bring this back. Yeah, seems like it's there. Then if I just check this one as well, okay, seems like these others are also commented out. I bring them back. So after bringing them back, let me just delete this print statement, or rather comment it out, and then now run the full test. So this shall take quite some time. Alright, we have 231 tests, and after 4 minutes 19 seconds all of them have passed. And so that's it for this tutorial. If you find this helpful, please consider subscribing, liking, as well as also sharing. If you have any concern, please don't hesitate to reach out in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.